Hey, everyone. Welcome to Locked On Lakers for Tuesday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. The absurdly shorthanded Lakers lose in Phoenix on Monday night. But the bigger question is, where do they go from here? And that's what we're discussing next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. Always free, never behind a paywall. And Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to participate in a great Lakers conversation, a growing Lakers community, lots of comments, guys talking to each other, talking to us. And I suspect, Andy, that community of people will be very active on Tuesday with a where do you go from here kind of conversation. That is one we're going to have throughout a lot of this show. The Lakers did play on Monday night. 130-104 was the final. They lose to Phoenix in the Valley of the Sun. But for if you happen to miss it, obviously Anthony Davis wasn't playing in this one. LeBron sitting for ankle / maintenance, it sounded like.
/ he's 38 years old with 1 billion miles on the odometer in season 20.
Darvin seemed to indicate before the game they're being real careful. You got to make sure you're not putting people in a position to get hurt. Russell Westbrook, who I did not realize hurt himself in Sunday's win, he didn't play. And Austin Reaves, who we did realize hurt himself with an ankle injury, he did not play either. So the Lakers started Pat Beverley, Dennis Schroeder, Thomas Bryant, Troy Brown, and Lonnie Walker against arguably the best team in the Western Conference. And the results
minus Devin Booker, though.
Minus Devin Booker, but the results were still.
But Devin Booker doesn't play all 5 starting positions.
Yeah. That was basically what you expected to happen. Mm-hmm. I mean, look, there were some good things. Dennis Schroeder, who is going to be really important with Anthony Davis out, picking up some slack as a scorer, as a guy who can get into the lane, penetrate, hopefully hit a couple 3-pointers. He had 30 points. So, it is a good thing for the Lakers to get.
And it was an efficient 30 on top of it.
Yes, very efficient. 12 of 19 from the floor, hit both of his 3-point attempts. He has quietly started to play better. Had a good game on Sunday. And if you're looking for things to carry forward that might be relevant when the Lakers hopefully have something closer to a regular lineup on Wednesday in Sacramento, Schroeder playing well, Thomas Bryant continuing to be productive in his 26 minutes. Those things matter. Kendrick Nunn showing signs of life, 17 points. That could become important. Again, the Lakers are going to need bodies to be productive with Anthony Davis out. Anything that can help cut the burden on LeBron is appreciated.
Yeah, speaking of bodies being available, Wenyen Gabriel returned in this game, played 27 minutes, which he said afterwards he wasn't necessarily expecting just because he's been out with that shoulder injury. Conditioning is a thing, but at the same time, they're missing a lot of guys. Mm-hmm. So he wasn't necessarily shocked that he was able to get in there. Max Christie continues to get, I think, significant, important experience minutes. And then, you have Patrick Beverley providing some comedy at a point where the Lakers, after his basket, were down 70-47. He drove against his nemesis, Chris Paul, scored, and gave the too small sign to Chris Paul, which is hilarious because A, they're basically the same size, and B, you're down 23 points. But
I mean, that's the Pat. That is the Pat Bev experience. Darvin was actually asked about that after the game, and it was basically like, I think his quote was something along the lines of, I gave up a long time telling how they're supposed to be. Like that's what Patrick Beverley does. And it doesn't matter if they're down by 25, up by 25. This is how he plays. This is how he maintains whatever edge he's like. He's reached a point in his career where like Pat Bev is like 80% like attitude as opposed to
no. He is 80% performance art at this point.
That's what I'm saying. That's a better way of putting it.
Like
the amount of stuff that Patrick, he has to get in character
yes.
to
he's a method actor when he plays basketball at this point.
Yes. And so, whatever it takes, and you can't turn that bleep on and off just because it is a game where even James Worthy in the post-game show on Spectrum said, yeah, I didn't think they were going to win this one. You don't just turn that stuff off.
I'm going to disagree. I think you could turn it off. I think Patrick Beverley chooses not to turn it off, in part because there is some degree of sincere motivation that he gets from it. I also think it is in part because Patrick Beverley is very much about promoting the Patrick Beverley experience. It's not an accident that literally the minute the Wolves were eliminated from the playoffs last year, he was on ESPN, started up a podcast. Like, Patrick Beverley is, I think, very aware of the next stage of his life in basketball, which may be more outside basketball than in between the lines, which, whatever. It is amusing at times. It is a parody of a parody at times. In this particular case, it was ultimately harmless because what was he going to do? Get the Suns up by 40? like it doesn't really matter.
Right. No, it didn't matter. And
it's not like this came up between me and Harrison Fagan over at Silver Screen and Roll. It was not like in 2010, the Western Conference Finals, Game 6, when the Lakers were on the verge of closing that series, and Sasha Vujacic decides to start his third-rate beef with Goran Dragic, which ignited the Suns, got the Suns back into this game. Kobe had to go full-on Kobe to seal the thing for the Lakers.
Yeah.
And I say this without hyperbole. Had the Lakers had lost that game because Sasha brought Phoenix back into this because he had unfinished business with Goran Dragic, Kobe would have murdered Sasha at center court in front of all those people.
Oh, and wouldn't have gotten arrested. I think everyone would have been justifiable homicide.
I tweeted this out at Cam Brothers, actually, because Harrison in my conversation just took us down memory lane. I found, because I remember this to this day because it was so damn funny, I found the post-game interview that Kobe did on TNT with the series sealed with Craig Sager. And Sager asks Kobe about that thing with Sasha. and he's like, what was your reaction when that happened? He goes, I was going to kill him. And he's like, now, going on the plane, going back, he goes, I may still kill him.
It was just there was no threat of something that important happening in this game. I mean,
right.
Truly nothing had to give in this. And I actually, we suspected something, not to the extent of Westbrook not playing too, because that was one we didn't know about.
No, that was surprising.
But and that could be maintenance to some degree as well. You're going to go into this one without AD. If you're going to give, Reaves is pretty certain not to play. It makes sense to give LeBron a night off because this is essentially a scheduled loss anyway. You got to keep these guys healthy. So it wasn't a significant surprise to see them, kind of put the lineup out that they did, presuming that none of this stuff is terribly long term. That LeBron, was more on the maintenance side than the injury side, and they can field a reasonably coherent lineup on Wednesday. We're back to kind of where do the Lakers go from here, because they are now 13-17. They face an uphill climb to get themselves back into sort of playoff contention in the West. The flip side is the West is cooperating, and they have shown themselves to be capable of playing with anybody in the conference. So where do the Lakers go from here? What do they do? That's next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by Turo, the world's largest car sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want, from a community of local hosts across the US, UK, Canada, and coming soon to Australia. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget. Book an SUV or minivan for a family road trip, a pickup truck for bulky errands. Just test drive a new electric vehicle you've always thought about, but you want to see, does this fit into my lifestyle? You can just find a regular economy car, affordable. If you're on a budget, just need to go from point A to point B, because sometimes you just got to drive somewhere. And many Turo hosts, they can deliver the car right to you. That is the unofficial slogan of Turo. Sometimes you just got to drive somewhere.
You just got to drive somewhere.
Every trip backed by liability
inspired
insurance.
An entire business.
Yes, it did. Terms and conditions and exclusions apply at Turo.com.
So LeBron was asked about, I think it was by Dylan Hernandez of the LA Times, always stirring the pot, that Dylan, as to whether or not LeBron was concerned that Anthony Davis's injury would maybe make the front office more hesitant to bleep them picks.
And this was after Sunday's loss.
Correct. After Sunday's loss. Oh, Sunday's win. They won on Sunday.
Excuse me. Sunday's win. I'm sorry.
Lost on Monday.
Yes. Excuse me.
And, LeBron had that tweet earlier in the offseason, or an Instagram post or whatever it was, where he liked the F them picks, meme that was going around and all that stuff. And LeBron essentially said, that's a question for Rob. I show up, I play, I put in the work, I do it. I mean, it's not exactly a secret, I think, that LeBron wants and expects the Lakers to provide him with the best opportunity to win in every season that he plays for them. And to whatever extent any of this matters, Rob Pelinka at the beginning of the season, when discussing LeBron's commitment, at least through next year, to the Lakers, said that the Lakers will do whatever they can to put a winning team around LeBron, and that's, they owe it to him. He's just that good.
Yeah, Jovan Buha from The Athletic had a piece about that after Sunday's win. And part of it reads, quote, as James walked out of the press conference, he passed by the reporter who asked the question and said, go ask Rob those questions. The implication was that James didn't appreciate being asked the question, but it was also fair to wonder if James was hinting at the need to apply public pressure on the organization to make a commitment one way or the other. And that phrasing from Jovan, to make a commitment one way or the other, I think really gets to the nut of the question for the Lakers for this season. You could argue for the entirety of however long the LeBron and AD era is going to last, because you and I have talked about this a lot, Brian. It has felt like ever since this offseason, heading into this year, the front office, and by extension, Jeannie Buss, has not had total confidence in the group that they have right now. They do not have total confidence in the viability of LeBron and AD as the superstar pairing that they put together 3 years ago when they won a championship. And it has felt like there's been a lot of proving ground going on with this group. And look, some of this has been extenuating circumstances when it comes to injuries now to AD, but before that to LeBron. And, I guess if you really want to be generous about this, the idea of what could be done with Russell Westbrook, but it has not felt to me since this offseason, and certainly where we are now, that the organization is either 100% confident in what they have there, but if nothing else, it's completely obvious they are not sure what to do.
Okay, that part I completely agree with, but I will say this. I don't know if it's, I think what you're saying could absolutely be true, Andy, but I'm also not sure, because I think there is an element here of magical thinking, on the part of the Lakers, that if we just hold out long enough, the thing that will solve our problems will appear. We will have an opportunity to get that third star, like a real one, a one that fits. We can fix this. And, because the problem with Miles Turner and Buddy Hield, for example, let's say that trade could have been done before the season Reportedly, it seems like it could have been. Now I'm not so sure, but before the season, as the more we learned, it does seem like the Lakers were pretty close to making that trade.
Yeah, I mean but that was always the risk of not doing
No
it
question.
preseason.
No question.
You give the other team
I
an
will
opportunity to change their mind.
correct. But I will say part of what has made the like the Indiana deal, for example, suddenly not work as well is like they just were better than people. Like they've been more competitive, and so that's a risk you run. But I just certainly didn't expect the Pacers to be particularly good. So,
and look,
least,
they're not world beaters right now.
No, but they're good enough that they're not ready.
They're
to
not
tear
disastrous.
It down yet.
They needed to be disastrous,
right? And that was the assumption. The assumption was, okay, well, if you want more of those guys from the Jazz, they're going to be disastrous and trying to tear it down. Well, okay, no, maybe not. And so the point isn't that those teams are going to win titles. It's that they may not be so, eager to tank their way. Like they got off too good of starts now to really tank their way into the Wembanyama sweepstakes in terms of the best possible lottery odds. So there may have been an element of prove it. Like we want to see what we have. We're not sure this, that, or whatever. But I do think, based on the track record of this front office and the team, that in the back of their minds, part of summertime, we'll have cap space. We could hold on to these picks and sign a free agent or make a big trade, or Bradley Beal's giving. It's why part of the reason you see all these reports about the Lakers being attached to this potentially disgruntled player or that one or whatever, that they're looking for and hoping for a magic bullet, because they know if they fire Buddy Hield and Miles Turner, makes the team more competitive, no question, but probably doesn't make them one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the West unless things go really, really well and they're locked in. And, so.
And respectfully, that's not really a plan.
I'm not condoning it.
But I'm just saying. I'm trying to explain, because other than Bradley Beal, name the superstar that theoretically wants out. I mean, unless you're waiting for Kyrie this upcoming.
Maybe it's Kyrie, but there's always something. There's always someone that pops up eventually, and
right.
Circumstances change. Yeah. A team's become like nobody expected the Harden Ben Simmons thing to come. I am not condoning the magical thinking that I think the Lakers are hoping for.
The thing
I just think I do think that is a huge factor in what they're thinking, that they're just holding out hope that there's that one thing that can mostly fix them, that will fall into their laps, that if they're just patient enough, they can fix it. And I agree with you. I don't think that's out there.
Well, it's also that's not really a viable plan, because it has to happen before this trade deadline, because disgruntled
if the goal is to save this season.
Well, no, period, because this offseason, they're not going to have enough money to trade in one of these superstars. They won't have it with LeBron and AD on the books. They're not going to have enough money to do that. So if it doesn't happen now, where you can trade Westbrook for that salary, it can't happen at all. So basically what you're waiting for is Bradley Beal to demand a trade in the next 2 months, if that's what you're picturing. Because other than that, there's no superstar that I think anybody can think about that may want out.
It's terrible. It is a terrible idea. You have learned nothing if if your solution to this problem, where you have an injury-prone Anthony Davis and a 38-year-old LeBron James you have to treat very carefully, is to go get Bradley Beal, who is always hurt, and earns $127 million a year every year until 2062. That's not a good idea. I do have a theory on, this whole, like, do the Lakers try to save this season? What should they do? Should they trade something now? Should they trade later? You touched on it earlier, and I think I'll pull on the thread a little bit more about what I think the decision they have to make. And so we'll do that next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net, your number one source for sports betting, info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer to esports. They've got it all at BetOnline.net. And because you love sports podcasts, you are listening to one right now, you can add another one because BetOnline has those as well. BetOnline has content. Content is king. Always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. So head to the website today or use your mobile device. Learn more about the trends in action. Bet online where the game starts.
So to me, at least, and you touched on this, the fundamental question in front of the Lakers, Andy, is you have to be comfortable with whatever. If you're going to make a move, it's got to be a move that you're comfortable carrying through next year. I cannot imagine. Maybe, again, go back to the magical thinking. Maybe something comes up, they get really lucky. Wouldn't be the first time this organization has fallen, tush backwards into, can we say the A word, Andy? I forget.
Ass backwards? Yeah, we can say that.
Okay. All right. I just wasn't sure how blue we were allowed to. It's not very blue. But it wouldn't be the first time they've fallen ass backward into something lucky. And managed to pull themselves out of a situation in ways they probably didn't deserve. But we're talking about Kyle Kuzma. We're talking about Bojan Bogdanovic, and those guys. And like, if you want to guarantee you can get Bogdanovic, I mean, you could offer an unprotected first rounder that might do it in 27, or 2 first rounders or something for Bogdanovic and something else from the Pistons or whatever. But that's not a good
Better
idea.
Be Cade Cunningham.
I would settle for Sadiq Bey.
Bojan Bogdanovic is not worth 2 first-round picks. He just isn't.
Nope. But I'm saying I happen to like Sadiq Bey. I think
sure, I like him too. But
you're right.
Really quick,
better be Cade.
Really quick though, a note about this in terms of the Lakers, even with the idea of an overpay. It's the real difference between overpaying when you're close versus overpaying when you're not. Because if the Lakers felt close, you could talk yourself, I think, pretty rationally and I think understandably into, you know what, Bojan Bogdanovic is not worth 2 firsts, but we are really close in a Western Conference that feels wide open. Screw it. Let's do it. F it, man. F those picks. They're not close enough to feel like they can just toss away 2 firsts for Bogdanovic.
And not only that, Andy, what has them so frightened here, and they are correct, is the understanding that they can only fire 1 shot. And if they screw it up, not only is it not going to help this year, not only is it not going to help next year, it's going to wreck the next 3 seasons. So like, there is a path by which do nothing. It doesn't make you better, but it also doesn't make you worse. And I think they are, maybe Rob's not worried about getting worse because, he can Jedi mind trick, Genie into keeping him around.
He's got a contract. The Jedi mind trick already worked.
No, but he can still get fired.
Whatever. He's got his money.
I'm sure he still wants the job.
No, but
he's not like us. He doesn't want to be paid for doing nothing. Maybe
I understand that, but I'm just saying, Rob has as much job security as you can possibly have, while understanding the fact that people get fired. I mean, his job security is about as secure as it can possibly be.
So, but if they go through another, this season is a disaster. If next season they'll fire him. But the point being here is you have to decide if you're going to make a trade this year, this needs to be the trade that you're comfortable with going forward next year. And, it's kind of the core of your team if LeBron stays 2 years, whatever. You have to decide. We're okay with Anthony Davis. We're okay with LeBron James. And we think Miles Turner, Buddy Hield, whether literally or figuratively, is a core that we can work with, feel confident in, and build around and be competitive. If you don't, and this is the part that I've been thinking about for the last few days, really since the AD news, I guess hasn't been confirmed by the Lakers, but essentially broke. If you're not comfortable with Turner healed, again, figuratively or literally, Bogdanovich, whatever it might be, Kuzma, because that's your big would become your big offseason move. Because you don't think that's going to be good enough next year either. Because you're worried about, and you alluded to this before. What are we doing here? Now you have to really, because it's not going to be different next year. Anthony Davis is going to be dominant, hopefully, when he's capable of playing, and very often won't be capable of playing. LeBron is going to be excellent, but mortal next year. And if you're not comfortable with that, then you have to get rid of both of those guys too and really start over. That would be the smart thing to do, to try to, rather than throw good money after bad, keep what you have, trade away the other stuff, and put a new team together.
What makes me question, and I've been questioning this for a while in terms of how much belief they have in this core. Obviously, there's a certain amount of aggressiveness that they can't operate with because they're dealing with so few assets that they totally control in terms of trying to make a big move. It's 2027, 2029, Russ's contract. That's it. And, there are varying reasons that all three of those assets have a pretty decided ceiling in terms of how desirable they are around the league. So there's only so much aggressiveness that they can operate with. But at the same time, it has really felt like they are operating from a position of uncertainty with what they have. And, an unwillingness to go for it in the way that you saw them do that at the tail end of Kobe's career, pre-Achilles tear. And, obviously, Kobe was Kobe. LeBron and AD, they mean a lot to this organization. They ain't Kobe. And there was also that element of openly trying to win one more championship while Dr. Buss was still alive.
Yeah.
And those factors matter, and I don't blame them for doing it at all. But, there was a certain reckless abandon that you saw them. And to be fair, the team that we're talking about with Kobe was better than the group that we're working with right now. And Kobe was younger than LeBron right now. But if this organization had internal doubts about LeBron and AD as a viable duo to build around over the next couple of years because of health concerns, I don't think anybody would blame them. But the problem for this particular organization, I think, is they are terrified of the perception of irrelevance. Mm-hmm. And they are petrified at the idea of nobody is paying attention to us. We don't know what to do with ourselves if we are not a haven for stars. And quite frankly, this organization has not had an extended playoff run with a gate involved for over a decade. They've only had 2 playoff runs with a gate involved since 2013, period. They had a first-round exit against San Antonio in 2013, the year Kobe tore his Achilles, and they had the 2019 one round against Phoenix. That's it. And I'm sorry, but you can't convince me that those financial concerns don't matter to the Lakers and don't weigh into the thinking as well.
Certainly could.
So yeah, there is a lot of, I think, push-pull, and I think you framed it very well, wishful thinking that goes along with this, where you may not necessarily want to accept the truth that is there, but you're trying to figure out, okay, what is the best way to massage this truth until you get up to the point where you have to surrender those assets. And it's like, well, I don't want to do that. Well, then what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like what are you actually doing at this point as an organization? What are you willing to commit to?
I think there's one other thing, and we'll quit on this. I think by now, most people would understand that if you're going to have Anthony Davis and LeBron James, the right answer is the right answer is not a third star per se. It is as large and viable a middle class as you can possibly get. That, I think, is what everybody understands. Like, that would be the best way to do it. They have put themselves in a position where that is impossible. They can't build one. And so you know, a good middle class, even if you count Reaves there, you can hold on to him and all that kind of stuff. You're talking about 3 or 4 or 5. You need $40 or $50 million to get 3 or 4 or 5 good players, and you need a draft pick that hits. They don't have the infrastructure to go do the thing that we all kind of recognize as the right answer to this problem. And so I think that is part of it too, that kind of maybe in the back of Rob's mind, he's like, well, we only have magical thinking. Like, there's a way to make this team competitive, but as we've talked about, and we can talk about it more for shows throughout the rest of the week, like, what is the threshold that they're trying to reach?
Right.
And so if the threshold is this thing that instantly makes the Lakers contenders again, that has everybody say, oh, the Lakers are back and they're at the top of the conference, and splash,
does not exist.
Doesn't exist. If it's okay, things break the right way, look, Steph Curry got hurt, like the Warriors are struggling, do you really believe in the Pelicans as a young team making that jump there? Lakers are in that mix. If that's the threshold, there are probably ways to do that, very risky. And that would be the high end, and with all the downside risk that's still there. And what I think they're trying to find, and I would love to get other people's opinions on this, is a way to somehow have their cake and eat it too, where they can not have that terrible downside risk that they apparently didn't consider with the Westbrook deal. They put themselves in a really difficult position where there is no really good out. There is potential for any avenue they take, tremendous downside for any avenue they take, and very little chance for something that's like the Anthony Davis trade, which is just a no-brainer that works out for them. Like, of course you're going to do that. You get Pelinka's going to have to GM. Like, this is like Rob has put himself in a position where he's not only going to have to GM, he's going to have to GM with incredible creativity and resourcefulness in ways that he has never shown himself capable of. So we'll see how that goes. The Kings are going to be very motivated on Wednesday. And then we got a lot of conversations to go through the rest of the week as the Lakers head out and finish the year with a difficult road trip. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you go to see all this stuff happen. And we'll see everybody Wednesday.